We are Lmtv, Linn-Mar Television. Linn-Mar, your news starts now.
Hey Linn-Mar, I'm Jacqueline here in the studio today with our Linn-Mar Superintendent, Mr. Bisgard. We'll be doing a year review and look at some of the upcoming developments and changes within the district. Thank you for being here today.
First of all, thanks for having me join you guys today. Enjoy talking school with high school kids, and this will be a fun conversation today.
How do you feel the pandemic has affected Linn-Mar students, both positively and negatively?
The pandemic has impacted everybody, whether it's teachers, parents. Definitely has impacted students. There's no doubt about that. I think it's been really challenging for students, just like it has been for our staff members. But I think it's really also taught everybody a lot of different things that we never thought we could do before, and that we can be resilient and problem solve and figure things out and really make the best of things. So I think in a lot of ways it's taught us our limitations, that we can make the best of really tough situations, and that learning can still happen even if it looks a little bit different than what we're used to having. I do think on the negative side of it for the pandemic, for student impact, I know it's put a lot of extra stress on students and a lot of unknowns as far as what does it look like, and hard to get into routine and really hard to stay connected with friends and in school. So I know that's been a real challenge. But I also know our students have been incredibly flexible and incredibly professional and mature about how they've handled this from day one. I think back to the first days of school when we weren't sure if kids would be responsive to wearing masks, or how would they be scared to come to school. And I was so proud of watching our kids handle that, from kindergartners, preschoolers, all the way up to high school, that they were ready to come back to school in one form or another, and that they were willing to follow the rules and do what they could to play their part and make the school year work for everybody in a tough situation.
Students and staff both have had to make a lot of adjustments this year. What are some changes that have worked well, and then some that need to be reevaluated?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that I think way back to when the pandemic first started, several of us were talking that we thought we would be better as a school system when the pandemic was over. We would learn things, we would find new things that worked, but we also knew it was going to be really tough to get through that and to figure those things out in the process. And I think that's become pretty true. There are definitely some things that I think we'll continue doing moving forward. I know the high school's already looking at some schedule changes as far as you had more flexibility during your school day, during lunchtime, and open class times as well for kids, and flexibility that way to keep everybody safe, but also to make things work this year. And I think that's worked very well for the most part. So I know the high school's looking at some schedule changes there that will reflect that. I think that's a great adaptation from what we've learned this year. I also think that the RTI process, something we've been working on at the high school for quite a while, as far as how do we best meet the needs of all students at all times, and the adjustments that were made in RTI this year, some changes looking into next year's schedule will be helpful as well, I think. I really think a lot of the things we've done this year virtually, we are so much better at now than we were a year ago, as far as how do you have an online class, or how do you help with blended learning, different situations that way. Communication with parents. Traditional parent-teacher conferences always had to be in person. This year we did those virtual. I think in the future there'll be some options to do a hybrid of that, where we could have in-person conversations. Are still really important to have, but for some parents it's just easier to connect with their busy schedules to do that virtually, whether that's via Zoom or other setups that way too. So I think a lot of those type of things we'll continue to adapt and use as we go forward, not just to the high school, but as an entire district. I know all of our staff have gotten better using technology just more naturally this year, because they've had to learn, they've had to adapt, and they have been successful with that. So I think we'll see a lot of different styles of teaching, look different than it used to be as well. And especially after teachers have time this summer to reflect and look about what worked well this year and what do I want to continue doing in my classrooms. I think there'll be a lot of nice adjustments there as well at the individual teacher level. But there are some things we did this year out of necessity that I don't think we want to continue doing forever. For one example, the dual platform method that the high school and middle schools have been using this year, where teachers teaching to kids in person and virtual at the same time every day. We had to do that this year to make it work, and everybody stepped up and made that happen. But long term, that's just not the best model for learning, we don't think, because the kids in person need the teacher's direct attention as much as possible, and the kids online do as well, and that's a hard balance to make work. So I think that's an example of something we probably would not continue to move forward with in the future too. So there's a lot of other things we'll look at. As a school system, we've done our board meetings different this year. We've held those virtually. We'll look at a combination of in-person and having them over YouTube for the future for our families for easier access. For example, we used to have maybe 3 or 4 people show up at a board meeting each month, and that was about it. This year we had hundreds of people watch our sessions, either live or the recorded versions, and that's been a good thing. It's helped keep our parents and our community connected to our school district in an easier way too. So those are changes we'll know we'll continue to offer for the future as well. So definitely some things we'll do better and learn from, and some things we're going to say, that was it. We did it for this year because we had to, and we'll move on from that for the future.
So students want to know, given our ability to learn remotely now, what will poor weather days look like going forward? Do we still get snow days?
That's the question that I get asked pretty frequently, actually. And that's an interesting question because it depends on the time of year what people want me to answer. In the winter time, they want me to say, let's just have a snow day. About this time of year, they were wishing all those snow days would have been virtual days so we could get out earlier. So it's an interesting one also because up until this year, superintendents did not have the authority in Iowa to have what's called a virtual snow day, so online learning for a snow day. We had a 1-year exemption from the governor of Iowa to allow us to offer those this year, but it was only for 1 year. So that was interesting. So I wanted to try that at least once this year. If I remember right, I think we had 3 snow days. 2 of them were traditional snow days and 1 is a virtual learning day. I think that's the right numbers anyway. But I really wanted to have at least one of our snow days this year be a virtual day, just to try it, to see how it would go, see what we could learn from it. Especially because if we had the option in the future to do virtual learning days again, what would be the pros and what would be the cons of doing that. So we learned that this first year. There were some definite positives to it, but there were some definite challenges as well. For some kids, getting online on a snow day is really, really hard to do. They don't have the internet capability, or younger kids, their parents are working. So there's just a lot of challenges that way. And I also recognize everybody needs a snow day once in a while, so that's not a bad thing to have either. The challenge becomes if it's I can't remember, it was 2 or 3 years ago where we had a ridiculous number of snow days. And those times it would be nice to have a virtual learning day thrown in there a couple times to help not make up 12 snow days, or to keep learning going during January and February instead of missing so many days. So that's a long answer to your question, but the bottom line short answer to it is the legislature is still meeting right now, but as of right now, they have not said that schools can have virtual learning days in the future. So unless they make a change in the next few days, we're most likely not be having virtual learning days for snow days in the future. So snow days are back on again.
So how do you see Linn-Mar changing and growing within the next 10 years?
It's a great question as well, because in a growing school district, that's something we always have to be thinking for and planning ahead, because it's something we can't be caught off guard with. All of a sudden, we don't have space for all of our kids, for our teachers to teach and our kids to learn. So we have to be looking to the future. So as you know, we have started a facility advisory committee to help us really plan out our next 10 years. Actually just had our first meeting Monday night, and that committee will be in format for approximately 6 months, we're estimating. It's a mixture of staff members, community members, parents, students like yourself on the committee, and board members as well. A really nice mix of our entire Linn-Mar community to really focus on where do we see ourselves in 10 years, what are our needs that we need to have from facilities, and then what budget do we need to have to make sure we have the money to build new facilities. So that'll be the work of the committee, and that committee will bring a recommendation to the school board either November, December, January, sometime in that window upcoming this next winter. So we look forward to that work. It's really pertinent work for the high school. The last round of renovations and improvements we're focused more on our elementaries and middle schools to give them space. We opened up Boulder Peak and Hazel Point intermediate schools this year, so that really helped our pre-kindergarten through 8th grade schools have plenty of space. We'll still have to look at another elementary at some point, but really the primary focus of this committee right now is the high school. Even though the high school got a renovation about 5 years ago, there's still another round of work that needs to be done. So This committee will be considering, some simple things such as our tennis courts. We know they need upgrades and improvements, and we also want to look at is the location where they're at, is that the best spot for them? Right in the middle of a parking lot isn't necessarily ideal. To larger items, considering such as, do we need another and larger auditorium? We know we need more athletic, weight training, fitness facility space as well. We know parking at the high school is always a hot topic at Linn-Mar, so that's on the radar as well. So, and then the other big question is, what do we do with the LRC? A lot of high school students have classes at the LRC right now. As we grow, does that entire building just become part of the high school campus, where classes all in that building? And if so, where do people like me go for work? Where does our new location become? So that's the work the committee will be really spending a lot of time on, is trying to decide how do all these pieces of the puzzle fit, and then what can we afford to do, and when do we start to do each of those projects. So that's going to be fun work for this committee, and then they'll have recommendations to the school board, and then the school board will make the ultimate plan as far as, yep, let's do this and this time frame, and begin to move forward for us. The big question that's out there, it's always out there at Linn-Mar, it seems like, is do we stay with one high school or do we move to 2 high schools? The school board has made a commitment before giving the work to the committee to do that we will stay with 1 high school at Linn-Mar for the next 10 years at least. So that helps drive the work of this committee to focus, knowing we'll have 1 high school for the next 10 years. How do we make this the best campus, the best footprint we can, knowing with our growth that we're going to continue to see. So current students can rest assured you'll be Linn-Mar High School graduates in 1 building for the foreseeable future. Like all of our 10-year plans, though, a lot can happen in 10 years. So if we have a massive enrollment change in the next few years, we may have to revisit that plan. But as of right now, we are fully on board to stay with 1 high school for at least 10 more years. So, and that'll be fun work to really dive into, because I think our high school could do some pretty cool things with some of the facility things we want to do next.
Linn-Mar has been growing forever, ever since it started. What do you think draws families to the district? What makes it so great to go to school here?
I hear this a lot from families, is we get a lot of people calling to ask about boundaries, where they want to make sure that the house they are buying or building is in the Linn-Mar boundaries. So, and it's kind of confusing to people, so we get that question a lot. So we ask them a lot of questions about why, what's their interest, and just out of curiosity. And what we hear from them continuously is just the reputation of the schools is one thing. The reputation of our community is really good as well. People like the Marion Cedar Rapids area where Linn-Mar is located. But the one thing that comes through loud and clear over and over again is just the people. Whether it's the kids, whether it's the staff members, the other parents that are in the school, just the people that make up the school are a big draw. The nice buildings don't hurt. They help kind of draw people's attention initially, but it's the really dedicated professionals, the good people that we have serving in our district, are really what is the magnet to draw people here and keep them here. And I can speak on personal situation for that. Way back in 2003, we decided as a family to move here, partially for my job as a principal at Bowman Woods at the time, but also because we thought this would be a really good place to have our kids go through school and to get great experiences and get the academic challenge and support that we wanted them to have too. And that was absolutely the case for our kids as well. And I think that's pretty typical of a lot of families. They're looking for where is the best place to raise our children, have them in good hands with professionals to help teach them and support them, and then just good kids to work with in their schools as well.
Thank you for taking the time to be here today, Mr. Bisgard.
My pleasure. Anytime you want to talk, I'd be glad to do so.
And there you have it, Linn-Mar, your year-end review with our Linn-Mar Superintendent, Mr. Bisgard. Be sure to keep watching LMTV News for the very latest news and updates. I'm Jacqueline Anderson, reporting.